Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey and I'm here at Ritter's, and we're going to talk about using tropicals as houseplants. So when I talk about tropicals, what I mean is things like mandevilla, bougainvillea, alpinia, canna lilies, calla lilies, gardenias, hibiscus, michelia, it's not well known, star jasmine, which it's trochlospermum, and then loosely I would consider citrus kind of in that category, because it kind of gets a similar treatment as these things, kind of onto the patio and then back in your house. All those things are things that we carry. You can, I think we'll probably send a list out too, and then you can look those things up and kind of see what you like, and we'll probably, when we get closer to the time to getting them in, we'll post what we're going to have, and you can look them up. It's all really pretty stuff that blooms all summer, and just really does well in the heat of the summer and turns your patio into like a tropical oasis. So the first one, and probably the one that probably sounds the most familiar, is mandevilla. It is okay, so it's somewhat easy. The thing about tropicals is there's just a few different special circumstances you kind of have to meet in order to have them on your porch and then bring them in as a houseplant. So when we talk about tropicals as houseplants, really we're talking about taking our tropicals that we have on our patio and bringing them in as a houseplant. So most of them, before I get to mandevilla, most of them need a systemic insecticide, especially when they come inside. They don't really flourish indoors, and so it's important to make sure that you prevent any insect infestations, and especially because they're outside and then they're coming inside, and outside they get bugs and then there's other bugs to eat those bugs, and when you bring them inside you don't have that ecological interaction. So the other thing is bright light. They all need pretty bright light. I don't think there's any exceptions here to needing bright light. So you either need to have lights or be on a south or a west facing window, but south facing really honestly is the best. The goal, it's not the same as when you have like a monstera in your house. You're not trying to make it super beautiful in your house. You certainly can with some of them, they can be really pretty, but you're kind of just trying to tie them over through the winter so that they can go back outside in the summer, and they get bigger and more beautiful every year. And another important thing is humidity, and this applies to pretty much everybody I'm going to talk about. You got to have extra humidity, so either a mister bottle or a humidifier, especially in our area because it gets so dry in the winter. Okay, so now we can get to mandevilla. It's okay as a tropical. I've had them somewhat successfully. You can do it. I know a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of customers that do it very successfully. It's important to have bright light and high humidity with those guys, and again, the systemic. You can get mandevillas that have a real big, maybe 3-4 inch leaf, and it's real, it's got a lot of texture to it. And then you can have other ones that it's more of a round, a little bit smaller, maybe inch or 2 inch leaf, and it's darker and it's more smooth. And both of those are in that category, mandevilla, and they get a nice, usually it's red, pink, white. There's a lot of different colors, but usually kind of in that spectrum. And they are very attractive to hummingbirds. So that's another really good reason to do this with tropicals, is you can really attract a lot of hummingbirds to your patio, which is a lot of fun. So with both of either types, no matter what kind of mandevilla you have, you have to be really careful you don't want to cut it back in the winter. You really want to hold it small as possible. So you don't want to keep it wet. You don't want to keep it dry either, but you don't want to just water it all the time. So that you're kind of holding back that growth, because the vines will get real stretchy and long. But no matter what happens over the winter, in the spring, after the danger of frost has passed, you are going to cut it back really hard. I mean, if I wish I had one to use as an example, but say it was like, yay big, you're going to cut it back pretty far, like probably about 75%. And you'd be surprised how much they grow in a year, and you'll get a nice brand new plant over the summer. The next one is bougainvillea. This one I think is also kind of in that category of it works, but you kind of have to make some special exceptions for it. Some people keep them alive in the house, going, not necessarily flowering, but growing all year. I find it easier to, when you bring them inside, you can leave them out, till we get to like 45, 50 degrees, till it starts getting a little bit cool at night, and start cutting the water back a little bit, and they'll drop their leaves, and that's okay. That you want that, so you can cut the water till they start doing that. You just water it just a little bit every once in a while. And it'll lose all its leaves, and then it's dormant, and you can put it in a cool basement, that stays about 50 degrees, 45, even colder really, but not below 40. And then in the spring, you will just put it outside, give it a good cut back, I would say, again, probably by about half or more, depending on what your goal is with it. If you want it to get big, do less, but cut it back real good, put it outside, give it some water and fertilizer, and it'll start blooming brand new, and you'll have a bigger and bigger and more beautiful plant. And bougainvilleas, if you can look them up, or look, in some of our pictures, you'll see they're really pretty. So the next one is alpinia. This one's not very well known. It's something you would find in Hawaii. We carry something also called heliconia, which kind of is going to fall into a similar category as alpinia. I think the common name is shell ginger. And these guys they're great as houseplants, honestly. They just need a little bit extra humidity. They grow in places like Hawaii. Canna lilies, those are pretty well known. Most people know what a canna lily is. They're pretty easy to bring in. Once they flower, that stalk will then start to kind of decline, and it will eventually die. So once it gets to the point where it's too ugly for you to look at anymore, you just cut that back, and the next one will come up, and then you do that kind of all winter. They usually won't send new flower spikes up in the winter, but they will kind of grow new leaves. And then in the spring, you put it back out and again water it, and it starts growing and blooming all over again. So gardenias. Gardenias are, I think, in the challenging category, but the reward is very good because they smell amazing, and the flowers are these big, I don't know, maybe anywhere from a couple inches to like 3-4 inches, creamy white blooms, and they really kind of want to have a dormant period. Most types want to have a dormant period, and they don't drop their leaves. They're evergreen. So you just kind of put it in a cooler basement, with good light. If you have not many people have good windows in their basement, but a cooler room with really good light, and you just kind of let it spend its time cold and not super wet, and you can kind of hold it like that over the winter, and then in the summer back on the porch, water it freely, and you get brand new blooms. An exception to this, excuse me, is the Veitchii gardenia, and that one grows year-round as long as they have a 10-degree spread between day and night temperatures. So say, 68, 70 during the day and, 60 or lower at night, and they can pretty much grow year-round. So the next one is hibiscus. These are pretty well known as houseplants. They do pretty good. The only thing that I see with hibiscus is they tend to get spider mites over the winter in the drier environment in your house. The cat's doing something funny. And so it's good. A little bit of misting helps, and then an insecticide like Mite X will work really good to kind of control that. Let's do calla. So calla lilies. There again, it's one of those things, it's pretty easy once you figure it out. You can treat it similarly to an amaryllis if you've ever done those. It needs to, after you buy it in the spring, and then you have it all summer. Oh gosh. And then in the fall, as it gets cooler and you start to cut the water, the leaves will yellow, kind of like how bulbs do in the spring, how like a tulip bulb foliage might in the spring after it's bloomed. And after that, after it yellows, you can kind of cut that foliage off, and then you can just put it in a cool basement in the dark and let it sit like that, kind of, somewhat dry, but not too dry. You don't want it to completely dehydrate. So you just put it down there, and then in the spring, bring it back out, put it on your porch, and you have it'll be a little bit bigger that year, and it'll just keep getting bigger and bigger. And I think eventually you could divide it. So we'll talk about the little bit less common ones, and these are just a couple that are a favorite of mine. Michelia, there's a couple different kinds. The one that I am most familiar with is Michelia figo, called the banana shrub. And that one, it blooms these really, really pretty, smallish, maybe just an inch or two, yellow, kind of creamy white flowers, and they smell like banana runts. And as they get older, I think that as the flowers age, I smell more of like when your bananas have like gone to the point where you use them for banana bread. That's what I think it smells like when the flowers get older. It's not unpleasant, but it's really neat. And I actually experimented with one of those this year. I bought one. We get them from Monrovia usually, and we will have some. And I put that on my porch in the summer, and it bloomed, and I sit on my porch and smell the banana runts. And then this winter I brought it in, and it's easier than some of my foliage plants I have. I just water it, and it's by a window in a somewhat bright spot, and it does great. Another one is star jasmine at Trachelospermum. I always stumble over that name. It's very long and cumbersome. That one is another really good one. And again, smells like jasmine. It's like a little yellow flower. They're really pretty and cute. And it does like to climb, but I actually have mine hanging, and it doesn't bloom over the winter really, but it's just a nice leathery green dark leaf. It's a really good plant, and I put it out on my porch in the summer, and again I get to smell it whenever I'm hanging out on my porch. Another one, I actually forgot to put this one in my notes, but abutilons are really good. They're kind of loosely tropicals, because some of them are hardy to zone 8, which would be like coastal Oregon. But abutilons, I've had really good success with them. I put them on my porch again in the summer, same thing as we've been talking about. And then I bring them in the winter, and actually mine's been blooming all winter. And it's a nice little, they call them flowering maples because the leaves look like maple leaves. Petunia. And the flower is sort of like a bell, and you can get ones that are like yellow with like red veins in the flowers, or just like straight red or yellow. I mean, they come in so many different colors, and they actually make great houseplants. So the final one we'll talk about is citrus. And citrus, again, it's kind of loosely tropical. I think we're going to do a class just solely on citrus, but I'll kind of briefly talk about it just because it's in that same category of, in the spring, once danger of frost has passed, and we're not dropping too far below 40 at night, it can go on the porch. And then in the fall, the cat's back behind there distracting me. She's so cute. In the fall, you can then, again, when Michael likes to say, when you turn the heat on in your house. So, when the nights start dropping below 40, you can then bring it back inside. And citrus, again, it's its own class, really. But you bring it back inside, you give it a bright spot, and you get citrus fruit. And it's really fun. So I think that wraps up our tropicals as houseplants class. If you guys have any questions or you're interested in any of the plants we talked about, please let us know. Thank you.